In recent years, documentaries have been released about various murderers and the awful crimes they've committed. This new trend in pop culture has created popularity around killers, from dressing up as Jeffrey Dahmer for Halloween to actually getting involved in their legal cases. A recent example is the Menendez brothers, where many people have begun pushing the court for their release following a docu-series. There is also the case surrounding Gypsy Rose Blanchard, who planned the murder of her mother and sat in a bathroom while her boyfriend committed the crime. She was released on parole again following a media frenzy. As more people got involved in murder cases, the question is, where does the criminal justice system draw the line? I'm now joined by Jerry Buting, a lawyer who starred on a Netflix series, Making a Murderer. Jerry, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Now, how big of an impact do you think these docu-series have had in certain courts' decision to consider parole?
Well, typically the like the Menendez case, when you talk about troubled childhoods, typically those are facts that are brought to the court for sentencing, not really parole. I mean, at the sentencing is when it's relevant. The courts need to know, what kind of treatment to order if somebody has a particularly abusive history in their as a child, or how long the sentence should be. Sometimes, though, the information isn't presented at sentencing, either because perhaps there's defense counsel doesn't do their job, which should be to present that kind of information, or it's just not known. Or if it's presented, it maybe is disbelieved by the court and the prosecution, as in the Menendez case, where they made claims that they were abused, but they were disbelieved until more recently, when new information arose that really seemed to corroborate the claims they were making. And that didn't necessarily excuse or didn't excuse the fact that they killed their parents, but it might have mitigated the charge, or at least the sentence. And so when this new information came to light, I think what it did is it caused the prosecution to take another look at the case, and we'll see. The judge has not yet ruled on what's going to happen in that particular case.
So I guess I want to know where the criminal justice system draws the line. So in regards to the Menendez brothers case, the argument is, when is killing someone deemed as not as bad? A lot of people have kind of glorified the Menendez brothers now as it was self-defense, or, they had every reason to do it. But if you look at other situations, sometimes it's not always like that. So where is the criminal justice system going to draw the line and say, this is very bad and this isn't as bad? Or is it always murder?
Well, we've always, for hundreds of years, we've always distinguished somebody who has a, particularly depraved mind, who intentionally plans and executes a homicide, versus somebody who, in the heat of passion, um, in a argument, or perhaps while intoxicated, or in self-defense, or in defense of someone else, takes another's life. Sometimes that is a complete defense, as in self-defense. If a jury believes that there's objective evidence, for someone to have feared for their safety, their life, they can use deadly force. Other times, it may not be enough. There are levels of homicide that are excessive use of force, self-defense, but they are still um, punished less in terms of the overall available sentence, and typically by courts and prosecutors. They're punished less if if they fit below the most serious type of crime, serious type of homicide.
Now, to follow up, though, this can be kind of seen as a slippery slope. Younger generations are now watching these documentaries. They're seeing, I guess, the example we're using is the Menendez brothers, and they're thinking that this could almost be a ticket to fame by potentially killing someone as long as they have a good enough reason for doing it. Do you kind of see this becoming a trend?
I think that would be pretty unlikely. I mean, there might be a few people that, a very few people, we're talking hundreds of millions of viewers, where somebody might, take it to that extreme. But the justice system's perfectly capable of punishing those people more seriously. Um, again, if somebody is in an abusive situation, even the Menendez brothers, there has to be an imminent fear. And so, as I understand the facts that were presented there, they had been abused on repeated occasions, but when they decided to take their parents' lives, particularly their father, it wasn't in the midst of an attack or an abusive assault, and so it would not have been a perfect defense. It's not like somebody would have, somebody who does that, who decides to sort of take advantage of that and try and get some fame out of it, they're going to spend many, many years in prison as a result. So that should deter the vast, vast majority of people from, a copycat type of scenario, I think.
Now, we do just have to jump to a commercial break, but we'll be right back to continue this interview right after these messages.
Sure.
I'm joined by Jerry Buting to discuss the pop culture of serial killers and almost idolizing some murders that have taken place. So, I do kind of want to flip the switch a little bit and talk about people that have been accused of crimes but are found innocent. So, how important do you think the media's attention is in terms of fixing the injustice of their conviction?
Well, information that's presented in a docuseries typically should not influence a court's decision because a court is supposed to base its decision on evidence that's presented in court.
Mhm.
However, it might make prosecutors, for instance, who watch a docuseries and provided information they didn't know about, it might give them a reason to take another look at the case. It might also interest defense attorneys to take on a client and to try and advocate for their defense and their innocence when they wouldn't have otherwise have known about it. So, I mean, there are thousands of people, certainly in America, in prison who are wrongly convicted. I mean, the estimate is even if 1% of those who've been convicted are innocent, that's in America, that's 20,000 people. And nearly all of them are unrepresented. They are unknown. Nobody knows about them. Nobody represents them anymore because it's maybe been years or decades. And what docuseries sometimes do is present somebody's individual case that was unknown before and give the justice system an opportunity to take a fresh look at the case. Once prosecutors take a look at it, there are conviction integrity units now in many prosecutors' offices that will go back and take another look and see whether maybe they got it wrong the first time. And we have to sort of balance the phenomenon of docuseries against the phenomenon of Hollywood crime cases, fictional cases, because in those instances, it's always the law enforcement that is glorified. They're the heroes. It's like they have a monopoly on honesty and integrity. And in reality, that is not the case. The vast majority are certainly honest and people of integrity, but we have many, many cases that we can show where police and or prosecutors have been corrupt and have caused innocent people to be convicted. So, um, what docuseries do, and they have a perspective of their own too. It's not like they're completely unbiased, the filmmaker. But what they do is maybe balance that out a little bit and give people a little bit more fair picture of what really happens or could happen in their legal system.
Now, I'm curious with these like Hollywood type of cases that have just kind of swirled a big, like a cyclone of popularity, I guess. Has that made the job of a lawyer more difficult? Are you guys receiving more letters or things like that, almost urging you to take a different approach at how you protect the person accused?
I don't know if it's a different approach. Certainly, I've gotten, many more letters from inmates. I always got them even before the exposure of making a murderer. But
Mhm.
certainly after that, I got inmates from all over the world writing me and talking about their plight and asking for their assistance. I once took a tour of a prison in Santiago, Chile, and a British citizen who had been convicted and was serving time in Chile came up to me and started talking to me about his case. So um, you definitely get a better perspective about just how many people are out there. In terms of how a lawyer would present their case, though, the defense is going to be very similar. You've got to be able to look at the state's case, look at the evidence or the government's case, and are there holes in it? Is there another side that wasn't presented by the defense counsel at trial? A lot of times, defense attorneys are very overworked, underpaid, some of them not very good. And, it's not a prosecutors might be much more experienced than some of the defense attorneys in cases. So sometimes the first time around, the evidence is not properly presented. And the way our justice system is set up, the finality of judgments really sometimes trumps actual innocence. And so, even if you can try and present evidence of innocence, you have all of these legal hurdles to overcome because the court will say, well, that could have been presented before. It should have been. The legal standards that are, um, you know, thrown as obstacles into looking at the actual merits of the case are very, very difficult on appeal. It's not like you just, an appellate court will just take another look and say, maybe the jury got this wrong. It's very, very hard to get wrongful convictions overturned. And so, and certainly when the vast majority of inmates do not have legal counsel at all, it's almost futile.
Jerry, again, thank you so much for joining me today.
You're very welcome. Thank you.